Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dynasty Hotseat Devy show. My name is Jack and joined as ever by the wonderful, magnamic Phil. How are you doing, Phil?
Yeah, I'm doing really good, man. Busy time of season, right? You think like there's no actual football games going on. Yet here we are from a dynasty perspective, helping people get ready and evaluating those rookies. Obviously, we've got the incoming freshman class to get our teeth into as well in the coming weeks. There's just so much going on, man. It's a great time of year.
It is a great time of year. It's exciting for fantasy players all round because, like you say, we've got those rookies to start really digging into now that not only is the fantasy NFL season over, the actual NFL season is over. Congratulations to those Seattle Seahawks on taking home yet another Lombardi and getting ready to sell the franchise for possibly a world record fee for a sports franchise. That will be quite a blockbuster deal as and when it happens. So tonight we are going to dive into a little bit of QB chaos that the transfer portal and various legal proceedings have thrown our way. We're going to have a look at 3 different quarterback situations at 3 different schools and analyze kind of what this means for their players, but also, of course, most importantly, what it means for their Devy value. And does it alter anything about our views on their value, what you should be doing with these players if they're on your Devy rosters or if they are on somebody else's Devy roster? So we're going to have a look at that. We're going to dive straight in then and have a look at what was going on at Ole Miss, because this is the big news of the last couple of weeks. And that is that Trinidad Chambliss has been granted, well, not by the NCAA, he's been granted by a court another year, maybe, of eligibility and is all set to start for Ole Miss yet again in 2026. Phil, your thoughts on the situation, and do you think we can bank on Chambliss being the starter this year? Do you think the NCAA are going to do anything wild and challenge this in any way?
I think we're at a point now where it's done. Like he's got his year. So if we start off like in terms of how it came about, it was initially designed like Chambliss was seeking a 6th season due to a medical redshirt. The NCAA said no. There were appeals back and forth over the last few weeks. Obviously, there was always that kind of clambering feeling of, is he going to enter the NFL draft? Is he not? So even up in kind of Senior Bowl week, the team at the Senior Bowl had kind of said, look, we'll give him all the way until the very last minute to see whether he wants to be here or not. We'll gladly welcome him in. But he continued the legal back and forths. Finally, a Mississippi State judge this week agreed to allow a preliminary injunction that would allow him broader eligibility and another year. His argument was that he missed all of his 2022 season due to health issues, and that shouldn't be counted against his eligibility. The NCAA have kind of balked and kind of made a lot of noises about whether or not that should be right. But for Chambliss, look, he was a fantastic storyline last year. He really, really was. He was, and in the biggest games, he played his biggest moments in the college football playoffs, especially. But last year, he had 294 completions on 445 attempts, so that he kind of hit that perfect 66.7. 2/3 of his passes completed, 3,937 yards, 22 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And that's before you kind of account for what he did in the rushing game as well, where we know he was a dynamic kind of dual threat. He added another 527 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. Like, it was a hell of a season, an absolute fairy tale. Yet, as a prospect for the NFL draft, there were things in his profile that left you wanting more and needing to see more to have any sound reservations about his long-term impact. And this is where it gets really, really interesting for Devy, because he's finally got that agreement for him to go back to Ole Miss. There's no way after all this I can see him not being the starter at Ole Miss. And yeah, look, it's going to allow him to answer some of the questions that draft analysts and NFL teams still have about his profile and his makeup. So yeah, great news for Trinidad Chambliss. What it does for his Devy stock, well, I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I still think, given the profile, given the late breakout, I think I'm still quite happy for what he's going to cost this season to let other players take the risk in the draft this year. I imagine he's going to go in the first couple of rounds, probably way earlier than I'd ever be comfortable taking him. Yeah, but great news for him. So, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a strange one because basically he's arguing that he should have had a red shirt back in, I think, 2022, but the school that he was at didn't file for it, and therefore he hasn't been granted it. So it's a weird technicality rule and it came before college football changed so much with NIL. So it almost feels like the NCAA could have had a really big win by just granting an extra year of eligibility. The NCAA's eligibility rules are a little bit of a mess, to be honest. There is no like hard and fast rule which allows players to play for a certain number of years. It's done on a case by case basis, which feels a little bit archaic, especially when there are arguments about loss of earnings and there are threats of lawsuits. Joey Aguilar, the quarterback who was at Tennessee last season, he is suing the NCAA for not granting him an 8th year of eligibility. But like, how ridiculous is that? An 8th year of eligibility, when actually usually we're looking at 3 years and going to the NFL, or those players that aren't going to go to the NFL, you're looking at 4 years of eligibility and maybe 1 extra year if you've got a really bad injury and you were kind of robbed of a year. So the whole eligibility situation is a bit of a mess. I am all for Trinidad Chambliss in this scenario getting another year because he's only had 1 year of playing at the level that he is clearly comfortable at. We didn't expect him to be as good as he was. We didn't expect him to play at all last season at Ole Miss, but he has surprised us all, and he earned the starting job, and he took his team to a playoff win. Had a great run in the college football playoffs. So I'm kind of in the whole realm of eligibility chaos. I'd love there to be a bit more uniformity and a little bit hard and fast. This is the rules. Everybody knows what we're playing with. But as there isn't, I'm kind of on board with this. I feel like the NCAA could have done themselves a favor by granting Chambliss this year of eligibility themselves, because they clearly had the choice. Like, there isn't a rule that said that he couldn't have it. So on that note, I'm really pleased for Trinidad Chambliss for his Devy stock. I think his Devy stock has absolutely skyrocketed. But like you say, you touched on it, he's going to be going high in your supplemental drafts or your Devy drafts this year because nobody will own him. He wasn't on our radars until midway through the 2025 season. So that whole principle that we preach about quarterbacks, like not reaching for a quarterback, not taking one too early. We've got incoming freshmen at more valuable positions and at more projectable positions that will be available. We've also got some of those wide receivers and running backs and arguably tight ends that have emerged over the last season that I'd be more interested in than taking Trinidad Chambliss in the first round, even the second round. So like you say, you let somebody else, by our principles, we let somebody else take that gamble. But I think, talk about a Devy rise, talk about stock rising. This is like his rise as a player has been astronomical. So, if for any reason you picked up Trinidad Chambliss before, this is a sell moment. I can't imagine he's sitting on many rosters. So Devy wise, it's come at the wrong time. It's that I was going to say classic, but it doesn't happen that often where someone becomes so good at the wrong time for you to acquire them in Devy that now it's too expensive. And it's like there was no buy window, there was no draft window. It's come and gone because you don't draft mid-season.
Yeah. Look, I mean, for me, it boils down to one real simple thing, right? He was a fairy tale story this year. He was an absolute fairy tale story. But had he gone into this year's draft class, there were that many question marks about his profile, he wouldn't have been. It would have been a risk to project him as a day 2 pick, despite how fairy tale the collegiate season was. And there will be someone in your league that knows the name, has seen the highlights, and is willing to invest highly in him this year. And my advice is let that person. Because the chance in this next class that he breaks the top 5, just seems way too much for me to call right now. If he does, spike the ball, come back and tell me how wrong I was. But I am well happy to let somebody else likely overpay and take him. Don't get me wrong. If he sat there in the 4th or 5th rounds of those drafts, because everyone's feeling the same thing, there's that sweet spot where I'll absolutely have a dive and have a gamble. But it will not be early. Let someone else, let a more casual player in your league that knows the name take that risk.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about why, after such a fairy tale season, Trinidad Chambliss is fighting so hard to go back to school. I think partly that is a money thing. I think he can probably earn a significant amount more in a 1-year NIL deal than he would do on a rookie contract, especially if he's being drafted day 3. But also it would indicate that therefore he's getting that kind of projection. He's not a foolish guy. He's at a big school that will have good voices in his ear telling him what NFL scouts are asking. Like, his coaches are going to know they're going to tell him what NFL scouts are asking, what kind of questions, what kind of projections they're giving him. I think there's a reason he's going back to school. His value to the NFL is not as high as some talking heads in the American media would have you believe, that he was the second best quarterback in the class and was going in round 1. He may well be the second best quarterback in the class, but that does not mean too much. As you and I have discussed at length after Fernando Mendoza, there is no surefire thing in this NFL draft. But yeah, I think that is a real warning sign that he is desperate to go back to school.
Wow.
The flip side of this is, obviously, we were quite excited originally about Deuce Knight committing to Ole Miss. And I think we even said this probably indicates that he knows and the school know that Trinidad Chambliss won't be coming back. Now, that has obviously all changed through no fault of Deuce Knight and completely out of his hands. How are you feeling about this move now, as a Deuce Knight owner, or even just in general, hoping to see one of our more highly touted by the two of us quarterback prospects from a class that, he is a while ago now?
Yeah, let's tell it how it is. If you own Deuce Knight, you feel sick to your stomach, because that is an absolute punch in the nutsack. There's no way of avoiding it. Like, Deuce Knight was frustrated at a lack of opportunities at Auburn, and when Hugh Freeze left, we were looking for a splash landing spot, and Ole Miss seemed like the perfect landing spot. To be Pete Golding's guy at Ole Miss, and you've got to think he would have had his choice of schools. He's chosen Ole Miss for the opportunity that was available to him, and he's just got to feel like the rug's been completely swept from under his feet. Chambliss now, there's no way he's going back not to be the starter, which means Deuce Knight is going to be relegated to a backup role if he doesn't look to enter the portal again. I don't even know what the situation is about whether he can, and whether you can transfer twice anymore, and all those types of good things. What's really interesting is you've got to assume that Deuce Knight wasn't completely aware, just like the rest of us weren't, because his social media activity changed massively. He purged any Ole Miss reference from his timelines in the immediate kind of days after the news broke, which is obviously a sign of frustration, which has got to have kind of fans nervous, really, because there he is, this 5-star freshman who, in limited playing time at Auburn last year, absolutely tore it up. Okay, it was against lesser opposition, but this kid should be your program's future. I guess we've just got to wait and see. But if you're let's get back to the Devy perspective, because that's where we're really bothered. You're now looking at 2 years of a 5-star freshman potentially not seeing the field, and that development curve kind of flatlining. which just leaves you questions about what his future does project from a Devy perspective. I think you've got to be so in on the talent to not have concerns right now, or be, dare I say it, thinking of cutting your losses.
Yeah, I really feel for Deuce Knight because, like we said, this was out of his hands, it was out of his control. He was probably given assurances that he was going to be the guy, or at least he's going to get a shot at being the guy. I loved this guy coming out of high school. And like you say, that one game he had at Auburn as the starter, he was on a tear. So that was encouraging. Nothing negative really arose there, but you'd kind of be worried if something negative did arise in that kind of game. It was such a mismatch. I believe it was against Mercer. Is that correct? I think it was Mercer. We'll say Mercer. We're now in a situation where not only is Trinidad Chambliss coming back to be the starter at Ole Miss, we're now in a world where with the NIL, there's a financial commitment to Trinidad Chambliss, which is slightly concerning. There's almost a political part of this storyline that probably didn't exist 3 years ago. So for Deuce Knight to outplay Trinidad Chambliss in practice isn't necessarily enough for him to win the starting quarterback job mid-season. Do you know what I mean? Like you and I, we're not high on Trinidad Chambliss as an NFL prospect, but in college he was so exciting. He is perfect for what Ole Miss's system was. Whether that continues into the new regime under a new head coach, we'll see. But there is an extra barrier for Deuce Knight. It's not just that Trinidad Chambliss is coming back, it's that the school and NIL partners have committed a significant amount of money, I imagine, to Chambliss being their starting quarterback. So it's a really frustrating one. And it means we can almost certainly, like 99.9% of my brain is sure that we can park Deuce Knight as a one and done quarterback. I don't think that happens anymore. I don't think he's going to start in 2027 and then declare for the 2028 NFL draft. So we're pushing him even further into the future. We're pushing him to the 2029 NFL draft. That is, 2 years further down the line than maybe we hoped. If he'd come in and started and won a job and played for 3 years, we were hoping he'd be part of the 2027 class. That's ridiculous that we were thinking he might be drafted at the end of this season, but he's unlikely to have started more than a handful of games by then. And even if he does, it's through injury. So we're pushing him far into the future, which devalues his stock. And just even if he stays at Ole Miss, it's who knows? Like that's another year away. There's recruitment going on for the 2027 incoming class of quarterbacks, the 2028 incoming class of quarterbacks. There's absolutely no guarantees for Deuce Knight now. So I love the talent. He's someone I'd absolutely go and acquire because I think his price is on the floor right now, but not with the expectation that's going to turn into profit, just with the hope that it's going to turn into profit.
Absolutely. It's a bet on traits situation, isn't it? But yeah, sucks. It sucks for the kid, and look, if that situation wasn't murky enough, we're going to talk two more quarterbacks who have had their own legal battles with the NCAA and the schools that they're at. Because we're going to move on now. I'm going to talk about the new Miami quarterback. We're going to talk Darian Mensah. Now, Darian Mensah was a guy that was on a lot of people's lips as a guy who should be looking to move to a bigger program, with no disrespect to Duke. So Mensah, it was banded about all the way through the transfer portal window where, what will Darian Mensah do? What will Darian Mensah do? And let's be honest, Miami, as a blueprint for a school to take senior transfer quarterbacks, are a desirable location coming off a fantastic season this year under Carson Beck. Looking at what they did the year previous with Cam Ward. Carson Beck, like him, loathe him, or feel moderately indifferent towards him, is going to be a drafted QB, probably on day 2 of this draft. So Darian Mensah was a guy who a lot of scouts look at as very talented and ready to make the move to a bigger school. So it was a name that was spoken about a lot. What really interested me here was the timing, because Darian Mensah left it until the final day of the transfer portal window to signal that he was going to move away from Duke. What that meant was an immediate legal battle, because Duke sued Mensah, claiming that he was still bound by a signed NIL contract, and tried to block him from enrolling or playing for another school. A local judge allowed him into the portal, but temporarily blocked him from enrolling elsewhere, pending the case being resolved. Duke claimed that he'd signed a multi-year $8 million NIL contract after the 2025 season. They argued that the transfer violated that contract, and they sought an injunction to basically make him play for them and not let him enter the portal. The parties eventually reached a settlement. How much of that is actually him and how much of that will be funded by his new school will probably never be made public. But it is uncanny that on the same day that the situation was resolved, Mensah committed to the University of Miami, to the U, just a matter of hours afterwards. And then, just to really kick Duke while they're down, also took his favorite receiver from the Blue Devils with him, Cooper. I want to say Barkate, but I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. Great move for Miami. They've paid to get the guy they wanted. This is a kid who I still don't think is going to be overly highly drafted. I think everyone's going to know the name Trinidad Chambliss. I think in more casual leagues, people are going to be less aware of Darian Mensah. And I really like this move for his Devy stock, because he's a guy definitely been spoken about in the kind of top 5 guys in that next 2027 draft class. And given the way that Miami have built an infrastructure around that offensive line to protect him and allow him to do what he does best, and how we've seen Miami quarterbacks perform this last couple of years, I think this is a real stock-up move for Mensah. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. I think this is a stock-up move for Darian Mensah. And from a Devy point of view, this is a great move. It sucks for Duke. It sucks for their fans. It sucks for that school. It kind of sucks for what the transfer portal has become. But Miami is a great destination to go to develop your final year as a quarterback. They are set up to take someone who they have taken quarterbacks who have traits and tools. They have flashed talent, and they have given them the platform to put it all together in their final year. So Cam Ward absolutely did that. Carson Beck, I don't know if he fully took advantage of that opportunity, but he certainly did enough. That team did really well. And so Miami is a great platform for a quarterback to come into. It's a great platform for a player to come into, because that team is competitive and back in the national title conversation. It's also a great place to go and live. Like you say, that NIL deal, Miami is a great place to live. It's also a place full of money, and Darian Mensah is going to be getting a good deal there. It does sound like there was basically a buyout, which is another scary thing maybe for college athletics going forward. But Darian Mensah kind of got what he wanted in the end, and I don't know how pear-shaped it would have gone if Duke had tried to force Mensah to stay. It could have got quite messy, and we'll touch on a similar scenario in a little bit where that has happened. But for taking away, feels harsh, taking away all feelings about Duke, putting them aside, this is a great move for all parties involved in terms of Miami and Mensah, that offensive line, the university. I think this is the real opportunity for Mensah to put it all together in his theoretically final year. We can't ever say for sure that it's his final year of eligibility now. But this is a great platform for Mensah to really see if he can put it all together, because I think similar to Carson Beck, he's flashed talent with a bit of inconsistency. And now we're going to see whether he can put that together consistently, whether he can put that together against theoretically tougher defenses. Certainly if Miami are successful and make it to the playoffs, they will face some tougher defenses, some trickier defensive coordinators who can scheme up certain things against him. Yeah, I think it's wheels up in terms of his Devy value. Someone who, if I was putting a name on it, if we were holding, acquiring, or selling, I'd be holding on to shares of Darian Mensah, because I'm not convinced that his stock will definitely go up from here, because the chatter is quite strong. But if I own him, I'm not selling him at this value. I think there's a real opportunity for this guy to go in the first round of the NFL draft.
I think he's a name that not enough people will be aware of, that you still may be able to get a slight discount on him if he's not already taken in your supplemental drafts. And again, in the mid rounds, he's someone that I would be happy to target and take the chance on, because you're not going to have to wait long for him to get into the NFL. So yeah, I think in terms of he's not going to go in the first or second round. I doubt very much. But if you can snag him late second, early third, I think that is a quick flip for profit, and a really, really good strategy. Take a guy who has got potentially 1 year left, looks like he's going to be a top 5 QB in 2027. The 2027 draft. Goodness me, where are the years going? And yeah, like we always say, if you take these guys, you don't have to keep them. You can flip and make a profit. It seems to me like a great time to do that. Here's one for you, Jack. Save the date, 14th of November, 2026, because Duke go to Miami in ACC play. That'll be a hell of a game for Darian Mensah. Yeah.
It will. It could only be better if that was at Duke. That would be the only way to make that game more of a spotlight. Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. He will be under some severe pressure to perform in that game, I imagine. Absolutely. I've got a question for you, Phil. Then we've just chatted about a couple of quarterbacks that we are hesitant to draft too early. But which one would you rather? Who would you rather have on your Devy squad? Trinidad Chambliss or Darian Mensah?
Oh, it's a non-debate for me. I genuinely believe Mensah is on the fast track to first round draft capital, whereas I still have Chambliss has got that rushing floor that gives him a certain grace for fantasy football, but at the moment, the game is still so raw and so undefined in terms of reading progressions, reading defenses. Like I said at the start, I'm happy for him to be somebody else's gamble. They're not even in the same ballpark for me. And I think smart players are going to fall on that side of the argument, whereas perhaps the more casual players, the ones that aren't sat watching podcasts about Devy like this, are going to take the shiny toy in Trinidad Chambliss and potentially... Look, I'm not going to say waste a pick. What I'm going to say is take a more highly volatile range of outcomes in the player that they draft.
And I think that's exactly where you can make some profit if you can engineer some kind of trade here. If you know that someone is interested in taking Trinidad Chambliss and you can kind of trade back and pick up extra draft capital or an extra player, this is where you can use that to your advantage, because I think we're going to see Trinidad Chambliss drafted higher than Darian Mensah in a lot of Devy leagues this season. I don't think that's even a question. I'm convinced that that's where we're going to land. We're going to have a disparity between the two quarterbacks, but not in the direction that personally I believe in, and you've just told us you don't either. So there's profit to be made here around Trinidad Chambliss and Darian Mensah if you can make that work for you in your league. So take advantage if you can.
Last one.
Last one. So we teased talking about a quarterback who has been kind of forced to go back to a school that maybe he didn't want to be at. And this is a story that broke quite a while ago, actually. We haven't touched on it because it kind of didn't fall well when we were recording because there was a bit of uncertainty about actually what was going to happen. And then we had some more interesting topics to talk about. But he fits well here in this kind of quarterback conundrum, transfer portal, NIL contract murkiness. And that is Damon Williams, the quarterback at Washington. So this is a guy who signed an NIL contract with Washington, a new one this offseason, which is part of the problem because he then tried to enter the transfer portal and was met with, well, to say it, backlash would underplay it. Some serious criticism from nearly all angles. It was a move that kind of, usually if you enter the transfer portal, someone's got your back and is saying, yeah, he's well within his rights to go and look for a new deal or look for a better starting spot. The problem Damon Williams has is he had already signed an NIL contract. He was already the starting quarterback at Washington. They had organized the offense around his strengths because he is a unique style of quarterback, not the guy that you can just plug and play in any system. He also managed to do this on the sly. So he didn't tell his friends and family. He certainly didn't tell his agent that he was planning to enter the transfer portal because he was subsequently dropped by that agent who had managed to negotiate this big contract at Washington for him. And do you know what? The confusing thing is that we haven't heard, the rumor hasn't really been solidified as to where Damon Williams was intending to transfer to. It almost feels like if he was going to enter the transfer portal, he had to have somewhere in mind that he was going to go to. I think he even tried to enter with a no contact tag.
He did.
So he must have had somewhere where he'd had unofficial conversations, but we don't know where that is. Nothing has come out. So yeah, thoughts on the mess that is Damon Williams, because he has basically been forced to withdraw from the transfer portal, and he will be at Washington now. Whether he's the starting quarterback, whether he can repair relationships there, we will see. I imagine bruised egos will be kind of forced together, and we'll have a season where he does start, and people will talk about being forgiven. Whether that's actually true or not, probably fickly depends on how well Washington do and whether they are winning games or not.
Yeah, massively. Timing's everything, and you know, the deal that he signed with Washington was reportedly around the kind of $4 million mark. Okay, so it's a big deal. It's a big commitment from Washington to, like you said, build an offense around the unique skill set of Damon Williams. The wording of what he came out and said is what I find the most intriguing, because he did the whole social media thing it was a very much I've got to do what's best for me and my future type post, which took, like you said, took everybody by surprise. Fair play to Washington, right, for standing up and saying, no, do you know what? We're not going to submit your name into the portal, which is effectively how they did it. They cited the contract provisions giving the school rights over his NIL and arguing that they didn't have to facilitate the transfer on his behalf, which raises another kind of deeper concern, way off the base of what we want to talk about when these contracts are signed, what are the players signing? You know, for Washington to have the rights to his name, image, and likeness and be able to say, no, you aren't transferring, like taking that individual kind of liberty away because of something that's signed in a contract, you know, that opens up a whole other kind of worms to me. But I did like the fact that they stood up for themselves and said, no, hang on a minute. You're not going anywhere. You've signed this deal. And, you know, basically said, if you really want to do this, we'll pursue legal options to enforce the agreement. It obviously like you say, took the agent by surprise. I love the fact that the agent cited philosophical differences. Because, agent, look, there's going to be good agents, there's going to be bad agents. I think that's the reality, and we've spoken before about, are these young players always getting the best advice? A good agent will have relationships with schools, with programs, at the NFL level, with certain NFL GMs and front offices, and you kind of wedge your bond to a certain extent for these guys. Like they've got to stand up and be counted for if they want to salvage any future relationship with those schools. If that agent didn't do that after negotiating such a big deal for Washington as well as Williams, then he's probably going to find himself out of work, working with that school again in the future. It's interesting because I don't think anyone's really come out and said, like you say, where he wanted to go. At the time, LSU was mentioned a lot to go and play with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's not scared of flirting with whoever he wants, as we well know. Alabama were rumored to be interested. Miami again didn't have Mensa in place at this point.
Yeah.
We didn't know at the time what Oregon's situation was going to be with Dante Moore. It hadn't been yet declared whether or not he was going into the draft. So there's all these big schools and big landing spots that could have been sniffing around and turning his head. He has come out and said he got some bad advice and has kind of recommitted his gratitude to his coaches and teammates and said, it wasn't ever really about upsetting anyone. All the things you would expect him to be forced to say as he eats that massive slice of humble pie. Look, in terms of his Devy stock, I don't think it really affects him. We've spoken about him before in terms of his skill set and how unique he is as a prospect. We know it's quite a fine line anyway for NFL projection when you're that size. I don't think it changes his Devy stock. I think he's just got to go out, if anything, probably gives him a little bit of a boost because he's going to have to go out there now and perform absolutely lights out to win back the trust of coaches, teammates, fans, and that can only be good for his projection moving forward.
Yeah, he is going to have to work hard. Here's a fun fact for you, and maybe a reason why none of the details have come out about where he wanted to go. That agent that represented Damon Williams also currently and still represents the Washington head coach, Jed Fish. So, there's certainly some good longevity reasons for that agent kind of sticking with the school or the coach that he represents. Like, he's got to think about his future earnings. Damon Williams isn't necessarily going to be in college that much longer. And like you say, the line that Damon Williams has to tread to make it to the NFL is a thin one. For those that don't know, Damon Williams is a smaller, skinnier quarterback, definitely a dual threat, like really explosive on the ground. He's a great rushing quarterback with some explosive plays through the air too. Like he's a decent passer of the ball. But the NFL has toyed with these smaller quarterbacks, and teams have got a bit stuck. You think of Kyler Murray and where the Arizona Cardinals are, they're in a bit of a no man's land where Kyler Murray, sure, he's a good quarterback. He's not by any means one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, but is he going to elevate that franchise to where they want to go? It looks like they're probably about to decide no. All the rumors are that Kyler Murray will not be in Arizona next season. So Damon Williams has a delicate line to tread, which includes not getting injured as a small quarterback. If he gets hit hard, if he gets rocked, it hurts more. He's more fragile. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens to him. Damon Williams is a player that for all of those reasons, I don't want to have on my Devy squad. I don't think there's any guaranteed return on your investment in Damon Williams. But I do hope that he regains that trust, like you said, of his coaches, of his players, that it isn't just words, that he does kind of step up to the plate, apologize properly, and earn their trust, because he's such an exciting player to watch, and Washington are such an exciting program to watch. When that offense is clicking, it's really fun. There's a lot to like there. There's a lot of opportunity for Williams to grow and develop as a quarterback in a really fun offense. So I don't think it damages his Devy stock. It's just his Devy stock is too low for me to be investing anyway. But certainly someone that you're not dead in the water if you own him.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. So those are our quarterbacks. They're the ones we wanted to touch on in this episode. But we have got a couple of other things that we want to speak to you about, because for those of you that are not aware, we sometimes throw around this phrase C2C League or Campus to Canton League. And we've done some episodes purely on Campus to Canton Leagues. But for those that don't know, a Campus to Canton League is a fantasy football league where you have your standard Dynasty NFL side. You've got a roster that competes for a championship. You've got rookie picks. You've got, whatever tight end premiums you want. Your standard Dynasty league, which if you are watching this show, if you are watching this channel, you know what they are, okay? That's your bread and butter. Campus to Canton leagues also have a college roster. So you own 2 teams, basically. And any players that play on your college roster also compete and earn fantasy points. So you play a college fantasy football championship each season. So there are 2 trophies up for grabs each year. And any players that graduate to the NFL from your campus roster are added to your NFL roster. So it's like an early Devy league. You've drafted these players to be part of your Devy squad, but they're actually earning you fantasy points on the college side. So it's a really fun way of playing fantasy football. It gets you good exposure to Devy prospects that are going to help in your NFL quest for the championship, but also exposes you to some really fun college fantasy football gems that probably won't make it in the NFL, but will score you some ridiculous 50 points for every week for the last 3 weeks of the season. Caleb Hawkins, I'm looking at you, and we have touched on that particular running back going to Oklahoma State. So don't tell me we don't discover gems by playing Campus to Canton leagues.
Absolutely. And if you've not seen us discuss that, you really need to go and check out our last show. Take a step back after this one. All right. Find the Devy playlist on the Dynasty Hotseats YouTube page. If you've not already liked and subscribed, what are you doing? Get that done. But we spoke about 27 transfer portal moves in 27 minutes, and we encourage you to go back and check that out. Caleb Hawkins is just one of 27 names we discussed on that show. Jack, go on. Sorry, carry on.
Absolutely. No, that's fine. He is the star of several of my Campus to Canton rosters because he is an electric running back who went from North Texas, where he was racking up yards and touchdowns. He's gone to Oklahoma State with his head coach, with his quarterback. We dive into that in that episode. But to get back to Campus to Canton leagues, last season we started one of these Campus to Canton leagues, and unfortunately for us, but fortunately for our listeners and watchers, we have an opening. There is a roster available in our Devy Hotseat Campus to Canton League, and we are basically thought, who else would we want to put it out to other than those who are watching and listening to our show? It is the Devy Hotseat Campus to Canton League after all. So we have one roster available, and we're basically going to do this on a first come, first served basis. Absolutely. If you are interested in joining us, both Phil and I are in this league. Neither of us won the champ. Actually, I'm saying that I'm assuming neither of us won the NFL side, but neither of us won the college side. So it's definitely available and up for grabs. What's going on here? But this is available for you if you want it, basically. Let me take us down. Oh no, you can see that. There we go. This is the NFL roster. It's on Sleeper. It's a free league, and this roster has, and we will list through this very quickly, in its starting positions: Baker Mayfield, Christian McCaffrey, Trevor Etienne, Puka Nacua. Has Travis as well?
No, it's Travis Etienne there.
It's Travis Etienne, sorry. Puka Nacua, Lad McConkey, Alec Ian Manor, Darren Waller, Aronde Gadsden, Kenny Gainwell, Bijan Robinson, hello, Jacoby Brissett, maybe the starting quarterback in Arizona next year. You've got some interesting other quarterback options there in Pickett, Rush, Wilson, and Smith. Some running backs in James, Patterson, Hassan Haskins, Garendo. Campus to Canton leagues are thinner squads, just to put it out there, because you are competing across college and NFL. Some college rosters are stacked, and therefore you are a little bit thinner on the ground with your NFL roster. So if you like those kind of leagues, come and join us. You've got Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, the two Houston wide receivers that kind of did pretty well this season. Ricky Pearsall, John Mechie, Will Disley, Mason Taylor, Luke Musgrave, as well as a few guys on injured reserve, like Tucker Kraft, Quinton Judkins, Marshawn Lloyd to a lesser extent. So this is the NFL roster for this team. Now, of course, Fantrax is not playing ball, and therefore we can't share directly with you the college roster. But I believe, Phil, you've got the team up, and there are a few highlight players to mention.
Bear with me one moment, because I've managed to close it.
That is all right. Something's happened with our display as well.
There we go. So a couple of names to mention then. Gunnar Stockton, Makai Lemon, obviously going to be transitioning from your college roster to your NFL roster this year. Other notable names, Hudson Clement, good high-scoring college receiver. Ryan Winger, potential first-round draft pick in the 2027 class in that lauded bunch of wide receivers. The aforementioned Deuce Knight, Houston Longstreet, who's transferred to LSU. Arch Manning, another very desirable name. And then Usman Cromer, high-profile running back, freshman this year at Florida State. Sire Gaines, who was much expected to fill in where Ashton Ginty left off. Some interesting names.
Trez Green, I believe, is on that roster as well. One of our favorite tight end prospects.
Yeah, we don't love to talk about tight ends, but if we're going to throw on a little love, it should definitely be him. So there's names all the way through this side. You know, good collegiate players. Darian Mensah. Wow, he's got some QBs here.
Phil suddenly wants to swap teams.
No, I don't. I like mine. But yeah, the both sides of the ball on this, the NFL side and the college side, have got a pipeline. It's not a side that's been built to dominate one side and forget about the other. I think you've got nice pieces and a nice transition plan there as some of the older NFL players age out. It's not a bad roster to have as your first dabble. Absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are interested in this team, I would encourage you. It's a really fun league. It's a good group of guys. It is free to join. We're just kind of looking for someone to take on this roster and maybe commit for a couple of years at least. Phil, this was your first Campus to Canton league. I don't think it's hard to commit to a league that is this fun.
No, not at all. If anything, you quickly establish how your season's going. Like, I thought I drafted the NFL side of the ball quite well. I've drafted the NFL's best new full-time cornerback. But no, you take a gamble, you put your team together. I felt like mine got bitten by injuries at key positions, but then also you kind of draft for that transition plan and players moving across. So yeah, I've found it thoroughly enjoyable as my first dabble, and look forward to seeing that kind of team progress over the next couple of seasons for sure.
So if you're interested in this team, then hit us up on X. You can see our handles are here. You can private message either Posh Plays FF or Jack CDC TT. First come, first serve basis. And if you are not ready to commit to a team, but you want to find out more about Campus to Canton leagues, then also please do message us or comment on this YouTube video, and we will be absolutely over the moon to chat further with you about what they look like and how they work, and answer any questions, hopefully, that you have. And that's coming from somebody who actually finally managed to win the double crown, winning the college title and the NFL title in one of my campus to canter leagues this year. So, humble brag, not so humble brag. That wasn't humble at all. But see if you can and learn from the guy who is very happy with his achievement over the last season. So there we go. Hit us up. First person to hit us up on X in our DMs will get the spot. We'll get you invited into the Sleeper League and the Fantrax League once Fantrax has sorted itself out and stopped being a pain in the butt. That is. Although I'm not sure that they will ever stop being a pain in the butt, to be perfect. But there we are. There we have it. We want to touch on one last thing, and this is basically a treat for you. This is an insight into the wonderful mind and workings that Phil has. Phil has been working really, really hard on the Franchise Stability Index, and this is an NFL project, and I'll let him describe it a little bit more, but it has an impact, or it has an insight for our Devy rosters, because it's all about what each NFL franchise is kind of prepared for or ready for. Is that right, Phil? You take it away. Tell us what the Franchise Stability Index is and how it can help us as Devy players.
Cool. So the original concept was this kind of big question. So I sat in a Dynasty League WhatsApp group listening to people, and I listened to a league mate describe Trevor Lawrence as a bust. And my skin bristled, and it got my back up. And, I'd scouted Trevor Lawrence just like everyone else did. He very much falls behind maybe Andrew Luck only in terms of the prospects that I've been around to scout and watch and kind of have a knowing of what's going on. So I pushed back a little bit, and I wanted to answer the question: do quarterbacks fail because they're not good enough, or because the environment fails them? And it's that idea of, do teams bust quarterbacks or do quarterbacks bust teams? And we've seen that kind of argument thrown around for a long, long time. We're really quick to label young QBs as busts, but when you look at Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield, Super Bowl winner, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, maybe to a lesser extent, the common thread isn't talent; it's the instability of the environments that they land in. Right. So the core idea of this is that development is fragile. Constant coaching changes, losing cultures, bad protection, poor investment in offensive skill players break development curves. Some QBs can survive dysfunction. We've seen that in some of the names that I've just mentioned, but most don't. We talk about QB traits endlessly, but we also almost never talk about the environments they end up in. And that's the part that franchises can actually control. When you look at Trevor Lawrence as that kind of case study, he entered the league as one of the best prospects he was that cliche generational quarterback. But his early years were chaotic, coaching turnover, a losing culture. And when stability finally arrived, we started to see those elite traits surface. He didn't all of a sudden become talented in year 5. The environment finally stopped getting in his way. So I wanted a way of trying to quantify that. I'm a maths teacher by day, for those that don't know me. I love numbers. I love being able to put data behind something to make it work. And I wanted a way to quantify the way we all talk anecdotally about stability of a franchise. So I was right, what do they need? So I looked at 4 key pillars. Coaching stability, win percentage, because obviously that talks about institutional health and culture of a franchise, sack rate, and then offensive skill spending. And now, obviously, they all weight slightly differently. The biggest thing for me is stability in coaching. If a young player gets stability in coaching, then the verbiage, the language that they're exposed to, the offense that they're exposed to, they've got a chance to master it. But every time you change coach, every time you change offensive coordinator, that language, that culture, that learning, that it changes entirely. So that gets weighted the heaviest. That gets 40% of the scoring, if you like. 30% for the culture and kind of winning institutional health, if we call it, so the win percentage. 20% is given to the offensive line and protection. So we just look at sack rate, and then finally 10% to offensive skill spending. Because if teams are investing in weapons to surround that QB, they're going to stand to develop. Coaching matters the most. But basically, you take all that, throw it into the spreadsheet, and it turns out a score between 0 and 100, and allows me to kind of ascertain over a 3-year period where a team lies when they're about to draft a quarterback. So if they score higher than 65, they're a stable franchise. Above 80, you can consider them elite. If it's between 50 and 65, you can kind of call that like a volatile kind of area. It's got the potential to go either way. And then less than 50%, you're looking at what I'm calling the danger zone. They are unstable and unsuitable environments to really be keen to allow a QB to develop and for their talent to flourish. So FSI, and this is the battle I'm up against at the moment, is trying to convince people FSI is not a measure of how good a team is. It's about how safe an environment is for a quarterback to develop inside that program. And there's kind of validation there. If you look at Baker Mayfield, he was drafted into chaos, 2 coaching changes in his first year, constant resets. His best footballs come after leaving Cleveland for more stable environments. You look at Sam Darnold, maybe he's the poster boy for this at the moment. After being drafted into chaos at the Jets, reset in Carolina, but then Carolina were going through their own things at that time. He finally finds that stability, first in Minnesota and now in Seattle. And it just shows that development isn't always linear. It's massively contextual. These guys didn't suddenly learn how to play quarterback somewhere else. Like they always knew. They just finally landed in environments that allowed them to function. So I was kind of keen from there for it to not just be a retrospective look at what's gone on in the past. I wanted to be able to have a look at what it can tell us about the future. Now, FSI will not predict QB success, but it does predict like developmental safety. So if you look at it this way, a great QB drafted into a danger zone franchise faces an uphill battle. Now, that's really important when we look at the moment at the Vegas Raiders and the potential to take Fernando Mendoza 1 overall. Whereas a mid QB, drafted into a stable franchise has a real chance to outperform expectations. FSI doesn't tell you who the next superstar is going to be. It tells you who's about to be thrown into the fire effectively. And what I've looked at developing and I'm kind of trying to develop at the moment is this idea of a comfort matrix where FSI meets your kind of traditional scouting report for a collegiate player. Scouting reports often talk about things like processing speed, poise, adaptability, mental resilience. Some QBs need structure, whereas others can survive chaos. You can have a look at Diego Pavia, for example, as a guy who's a potential day 3 quarterback this year. His game is built around chaos. And therefore, when you look at how he scores as a quarterback this year on the FSI, he will be able to stand certain elements of environments that other QBs, perhaps more highly ranked, can't because of the type of player that he is. So the idea is basically to pair a QB's profile with an FSI score to create a kind of comfort matrix. So, for example, a low FSI team and a low resilience QB is an absolute disaster risk, whereas a high FSI team with a raw QB, is the ideal kind of development environment for them. FSI doesn't aim to in any way whatsoever replace scouting. It just helps contextualize it a little bit better. I suppose it's the idea of if you can score every team in the league and have a look who are the stable teams, whilst others are still set, cycling coaches, schemes and philosophies, like it just allows you to have that argument kind of more contextually in the real time. Are the Raiders in the ideal location and spot in their cycle to take Fernando Mendoza? Are the Rams stable enough? I'll let you in a little secret. Yes, they are. They score in that kind of elite scoring bracket. There's the highest FSI team in the NFL. Are they in the perfect position, in fact, to stash their choice of QB2, potentially QB3, behind Matt Stafford for a year and allow that QB to develop? Like FSI says, that is the absolute perfect situation If you can take a guy with developmental traits like a Ty Simpson, perhaps even a high-profile game manager in the second round, like a Carson Beck, and allow him to develop for a year behind Matthew Stafford before finally taking the reins. The Rams are a culture and a franchise stable enough to allow that player time to develop. Is a high upside QB better served sitting in a stable system than starting in chaos? Look at how Cam Ward did this year at Tennessee. Would he have been better served going elsewhere? Well, I mean, the argument is obviously, drafting a quarterback into instability even is like planting a seed in concrete. You're not going to allow it to grow. What I want to do moving forward is I want to track the FSI. So just for context, it's a 3-year rolling score. So I'm in the process at the moment of tracking all 32 teams. And we'll kind of update that year in, year out, depending on coaching changes, updating the all the kind of data behind it to give us a 3-year rolling average to track and monitor stability and instability. I don't want it to be a hot take tool. I want it to be a lens, a way to stop kind of blaming players for systemic failures. We spend years evaluating quarterbacks. People in the NFL spend millions annually on investing them, but we almost spend no time at all evaluating the franchises that develop them. And I suppose I'm just hoping to try and flip that conversation and flip that narrative.
It's amazing. What you've done is brilliant. It's a really insightful look into NFL franchises. I am really interested to see how FSI shows us the impact that a quarterback can have on a franchise as well. So we're talking about the franchise stability index for incoming quarterbacks, but also how quickly can a quarterback who can thrive maybe in a chaotic franchise in terms of its stability, how quickly can the whole franchise elevate? Because obviously with a quarterback who can overcome instability and therefore bring more wins and therefore convince owners to invest more in their offensive weapons, that kind of thing. There are metrics that the quarterback can control. So I'm going to be really interested to see how franchises move up and down different zones. Like, for example, I mean, this is a bit of bias. I've seen the Patriots are in the danger zone, according to the FSI, yet they have made it to the Super Bowl. They have a young quarterback that is maybe taking a little bit of stick in the last few weeks. But if you look at his season as a whole package, was incredible. And a head coach that knows how to get the best out of his players. So it'll be really interesting to see how teams like that can elevate quickly, but also assuming Fernando Mendoza does go to the Raiders at 1 or goes to probably, even if it's not the Raiders and they trade out a more unstable franchise, can he elevate them? What happens there? Because obviously we can't control what happens in the NFL draft. That's like...
absolutely.
That's not what this is for, but it'll be really interesting to see and track how quickly a quarterback that can transcend instability can change a franchise. And therefore, when we're looking at those quarterbacks that are likely to be taken first or second overall, do they have the same traits that those quarterbacks had as prospects? Are they going to be likely to overcome instability? Because it's very rare that you get a franchise that is stable drafting first, second, or third. But then for Devy, I think my point was going to be the way that we can use this for Devy is really looking at those players that are those quarterbacks that are on our rosters already that are getting ready for the NFL draft and evaluating where they're likely to go. Maybe gives us an edge when the NFL draft is finished, but the season hasn't started yet. That kind of post-draft buzz and excitement landing spot can feel very exciting. People can write whatever narrative they want is basically what happens. If a quarterback is drafted to your particular franchise, there can be buzz written about it. I think this is something that could give us a heads up on those scenarios in which quarterbacks we could actually make a profit on by selling, maybe that we weren't considering selling before they were drafted. Is there anything else you think this would be useful for Devy players?
I suppose it's about knowing where teams are heading and getting ahead of the cycle. So one of the interesting things that come up at the moment is there's been a little bit of pushback on how certain teams have scored and people asking questions. And, there are certain things that FSI doesn't measure, and it's very, very intentional. So FSI doesn't judge where a team feels like it's going. So there was a lot of surprise that the Miami Dolphins scored stably, given their recent kind of coaching changes and bringing in Jeff Hafley. Obviously, the news this week that they've cut Tyreek Hill and are looking to move on from high-cost veterans. But it doesn't judge where it feels like a team's going. It measures the environment that's been there over time. So Miami's score actually reflects the fact that it's been a functional, supportive environment recently. However, there's no guarantee it's going to be stable moving forward, and that distinction really, really matters. It's designed to avoid overreactions and overcorrections to one coaching change, one bad season, one front office pivot. But right now, it's clear that Miami's a team that's transitioning. But the data window still includes the fact that they've had strong investment in their offense. They've had functional win totals operating kind of every year around that kind of 8 and 9, 9 and 8 mark. And a QB was protected relative to league average. They scored well from an offensive line standpoint in terms of sack totals. So although the foundation's been stable, it is a stable environment for a new QB, even if they're starting for cracks to be shown. So if they move on from Tua this year, with that line still very much in place, even with the new coaches, I would be quite happy to bet on a QB that goes there if I'm a dynasty player.
Fabulous. This is a really interesting conversation to start. I'm sure we'll have more conversations about it going forward, and there's loads over on X. So Phil, what's your plan with rolling this out? I know quite a lot of the team scores are out there. There's quite a lot of posts on X already. How are you managing this rollout?
Yeah, so we're going 32 teams in 32 days. I'm actually ahead of that at the moment because I got really excited Super Bowl day and dropped both teams that day. But it's a talking point. If you want to know how your team's done, go and have a look. Obviously, it will change. I love the fact that we've got people arguing they feel unstable versus the data that says they've already been stable. FSI is not about where a team's going. It's about what kind of environment they've been. And yeah, like I said, I just wanted to be able to quantify the kind of historic narrative and the historic story around some of your favorite quarterbacks that maybe hit or didn't hit, and kind of show that it's not necessarily always their fault. Good franchises tend to stay good, bad franchises tend to stay bad, and then there's an awful lot of movement in the middle. So yeah, come and have a look, come and get involved. Have a read. And on the top of my page, I've got a link to all the articles that I've written using FSI. Come and get involved, see what you think.
Yeah, check out Posh Plays FF on X for all of that goodness. Right, Phil, we're gonna sign off for another week on the Dynasty Hotseat Devy show. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time to give you some more Devy goodness and chat about all things college football and maybe a bit of NFL again, like this evening. In the meantime, make sure you're following both of us on X, but also the Dynasty Hotseat channel on X. You already know where the Dynasty Hotseat channel is on YouTube because you are watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification button. Then you will know every time one of the team or some of the team are going live. We are here every 2 weeks. Make sure you check us out. We will see you very soon.
Peace.